Hey everyone, in this chapter I want to go a little bit over the way how I got my Blender set up, what keyboard shortcuts I have mapped and what add-ons are used so you can have as much seamless experience with the course as possible. So with this in mind, let's get to the first thing, and that's keyboard and mouse setup. By default, Blender uses the 3-button mouse configuration, so with the scroll wheel, clickable scroll wheel, you can navigate the viewport. And it uses the numpad keys on the keyboard to navigate the viewport. So if, for example, you use a laptop, or you have a keyboard that doesn't have a numpad, or you're using a Magic Mouse on a Mac which doesn't have a clickable scroll wheel, you might run into problems. Of course, this can be solved, and I want to show you right now how. It's possible that you have all these things figured out already, but in case you don't, please bear with me. I just want to quickly show you what problems you might run into. So first of all, we use the middle mouse button for navigating the viewport, but if you don't have this button, you can always go to the preferences, and in the input section you can emulate the 3-button mouse. I will just check this right now, and now if I close the preferences, and I can now emulate it by holding Alt and clicking the left mouse button and dragging around, and you can see the screencast shows that I'm pressing the middle mouse button, but in fact I'm holding the Alt and left clicking. So this is the 3rd mouse button emulation. And now this might come with a set of some problems. So for example, if I create a loop with Ctrl R here, and by default, let me just disable this. By default, you can select the loop by Alt and left clicking here. But when you use the 3-button mouse emulation, this of course no longer works, because this is binded to emulating the 3rd mouse button. So the way you would select the loops is double click. So you just double click the left mouse button and the loop is selected, which is a nice replacement in my opinion. So there should be no problem with using the mouse without the 3rd mouse button. Now the second thing is the numpad on the keyboard. When you use the numpad shortcuts like the 7 for the top view, 1 for the front view, you can easily switch like this, and 5 for the perspective and orthographic. If you don't have the numpad, this might be a problem, and of course there's a way how to deal with that. Let me just disable this 3-button mouse emulation, and you can see the checkbox to emulate numpad. And again, this is in the settings input section. You click the emulate numpad, and right now if you press the regular buttons on your keyboard that's over your letters, like the 1, 3, that basically replaces the functionality of the numpad. But again, you lose some of the functionality, because if I now disable this numpad emulation, you can see I can switch through the vertex, edge and face select by pressing number 1, 2 and 3. And I use this all the time to switch between the selection modes. So when you're using the numpad emulation, you of course disable this option. I haven't dug deep into this yet, so I don't have an exact solution, but I think the number shortcuts are available if you want to map them to this functionality. So with a little bit of tinkering, you should be able to get this going. So this is just to put this out there, that these things might be a problem if you use a keyboard without a numpad or a laptop, or if you don't have a 3rd button mouse. And we can now move to other things I've set up in my Blender.